At this point, I'd like to introduce Catherine Donald, Executive Director for the Coalition for Tobacco-Free Arkansas, and she's here to provide us a presentation on Electronic Cigarettes 101.
Thank you. And this is really basic 101 electronic cigarettes. And I will probably be very conscious and try to use the term electronic cigarettes instead of cutting it off to e-cigs, which is a lot easier to do. But along in my presentation, you will learn the reason why I am trying to be conscientious and always using the term electronic cigarettes. So let's get started. Okay. What is an electronic cigarette? I know by now, all of you have seen one probably. Unless you've been living in a rabbit hole, I bet you have seen this product in some form or fashion. But electronic cigarette, or some people call them e-cigs, I won't say that much, but I want you to know that people do use that term. Electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes are marketed as a tobacco-free nicotine delivering device. It is a device. And I want you to know that it has received very little research on this product. It has just come into the U.S. market several years ago, but there is not a lot of research done proving that this product is safe. And how is it made? The e-cigarette has 3 basic components, and you can see from the diagram here. But it looks very much like the traditional, conventional cigarettes. But there are 3 basic components to this particular device. The main components of electronic cigarettes, you have the cartridge, which is related to the filter in a conventional cigarettes. You have the atomizer, and then you have a lithium battery. When you put those 2 things together, it's very reminiscent of a conventional combustible cigarette. And how does this product work? An electronic cigarette is, of course, we said it's a device, and I want you to make sure you hold on to certain terminologies, because when we're talking about a device, people have a tendency to kind of visualize something other than a harmless, what they think, cigarette, and we know that a cigarette is not harmless, but we want to make sure that we're using those words that will put into a person's mind so they are visually conscious that this is a tool, it is a device that's delivering something into your body, and that something is nicotine. How old is the modern day product? And I use the term modern day because back in the probably 80s, there was a product called Eclipse, and it was a electronic product, but it just did not get off the ground. Smokers did not like this product, but from time to time you can find it, I call like in the cigarette museum. So there was a time where a product came to market, but it did not get any lift. So I am using the modern day, the word modern day e-cigarettes for the products that we're talking about today. The electronic cigarettes was first introduced into the U.S. back in 2008, 2009. That's when we first started seeing these products in the U.S. And they primarily came from China. And I can tell you a little stories. There were several tobacco prevention advocates, and we had gone to a national conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and this was in 2009. We had heard about the products, but we had not laid our eyes on the products. And one evening we went out to a local mall, and in this particular mall they had set up a kiosk, and they were heavily promoting e-cigarettes. And so I had an opportunity to lay my eyes on one. And for those of you, that's the same year that President Barack Obama signed the Smoking and Family Act, you know, the ones that we have today. And we were in Phoenix when that happened, and I was in Phoenix at that same conference. when I saw my first e-cigarette. What is inside of the cigarette? We know how it's made, but I want you to know what is inside of it. I wish I could tell you everything, but I'm going to share with you the little research that has been done on e-cigarettes. There are some things that are reminiscent, the findings of reminiscence of what is actually in conventional cigarettes. And this is a study that came out of, as you see in the second bullet point, a study that came out of a French consumer magazine, the National Consumers Institute. This is a French publication, but it's a noted one. In August of 2013, they found a significant quantities of carcinogen molecules inside of what that vapor that comes from the e-cigarettes, you know, because e-cigarette people will let you know there's no secondhand smoke coming from this, so it's safe. But there are some things have been found inside of the vapor. From the 2013 study, researchers found that in 3 of the 11 products, 3 of 10 e-cigarettes studied, the level of, and I put in bold formaldehyde because those of you who work in tobacco control and you know those 4,000 plus chemicals inside of a regular combustible cigarette, we know formaldehyde is also found in combustible. Guess what? They've found formaldehyde in e-cigarettes too. And also from the same French study, they found several other chemicals, and one of those chemicals is a molecule called acrolein, and it was detected sometimes at a level that was even higher than in traditional cigarettes. I had to educate myself because I'm thinking like, what is this product? I'm not so sure about it. So when I went in and I looked it up and found out that it is actually a pulmonary irritant, you know, so we know about your respiratory system and your pulmonary system. And this is a product that they used in chemical warfare. But in the US, it is not a banned product. So they also found this inside of the vapor on the e-cigarettes, so keep that in mind. The other thing we want to talk about is the growth of electronic cigarettes in the US market. I shared with you that in the US, the first products came in from China around 2008, 2009. This is 2014. But February 2014, so that hasn't been so long ago, has it? Okay. So I want you to keep that in mind. It hasn't been so long ago that this product came in to the marketplace in the US. But guess what? It has grown by leaps and bounds. People thought, let me back up a little bit. I told you in 2009 in the summer of August when we were at this conference in Phoenix, I was really disturbed about seeing that product at the mall and the way they were pushing it on us. And I thought they're probably pushing it on everyone else. So I remember coming back, and Ruthie Johnson and a couple of other public health advocates, and we talked about, you know what, we really need to do something about this. But when we came back to Arkansas, there was not, you know, we had heard of it, but we still hadn't seen it in the US, in the Arkansas market. That was August, but by September, I went out to Park Plaza Mall, and at Park Plaza Mall, they had set up a kiosk, and they were promoting and selling electronic cigarettes. And then I went over to McCain Mall, because both of those malls are Simon Properties, and sure enough, there was a kiosk there. Just a month later. And I remember us talking with Dr. Carolyn Dressler, who was at the Arkansas Department of Health Tobacco Prevention Program, saying, what can we do to maybe get ahead of this product? Because it appears that the tobacco control advocates that we're always behind, you know, we're playing catch up. We let things get out in front of us, and we thought this is a good way for us to get ahead of this product before it overtakes us. But people didn't pay, you know, they were saying, well, you know, we don't know a whole lot about it. We don't see it very many places, just a couple of places. And so that was kind of the conversation around it in 2009. But fast forward 2014, that is not so today. So I said, while public health advocates debate, the e-cigarette industry is gaining momentum and running, while we're skipping and debating on, what can we do when we have our hands tied behind our backs. The market, the e-cigarette market, and keep in mind, we're just talking about this one product, is expected to reach 1 billion, billions with a B, this year, 1 billion in sales. And analysts say that the sale could even top 10 billion in the next 5 years. I'm saying billions, that's a lot of money in this one particular product. And think about it, people have not quit smoking, they're adding this product and it's still selling in the billions. And this is the kicker. With at the rate this product is growing, it is projected to actually eclipse combustible cigarettes by 2047. That it's going to outsell regular cigarettes. Not good. Okay, now who's using? We know it's growing, but so who's really using this product? Well, we have research, and we do have good research to kind of tell us who's actually utilizing the product. And the next, this slide here should really give us pause, and I think should really make us really want to scream and probably the hair stand up on your arms, because in 2012, the National Youth Tobacco Survey showed that there was an increase in usage among the youth population using this particular product. And let's just see about how much the youth population is using. From 2011, keep in mind, 2011 to 2012, the cigarette smoking rate fell to 15.8%. So that's a good thing, right? Because we like to talk about how we are working and how we are making progress. And we talked about the youth rate is falling for smoking. By golly gee, we're doing good stuff. And but look, on the other side of that, we have in 2012, e-cigarette use rose among those same teens who are putting down the combustible cigarettes, and they're picking up electronic cigarettes. In middle school, the usage of electronic cigarettes went from 0.6% to 1.1%. In high school, it went from 1.5 to 2.8%. And then the CDC also reports that the percentage of high school students who have used the e-cigarette jumped from 4.7% in 2011 to 10% in 2012. Think about that, 4.7 in 2011, a mere 12 months later down the road, it is now 10%. You can see kids are using this product. And keep in mind, they shouldn't be. And I need to tell you why we're talking about kids in this this particular product. Last year, 2013, the Arkansas General Assembly passed a law making it against the law to sell e-cigarettes to minors in the state of Arkansas. Prior to that, they were open game. So there is a law in Arkansas, but most places they do not have a law similar to ours. Okay, the marketing of e-cigarettes. E-cigarette makers have marketed their products with the same tactics that they use to market combustible cigarettes. Those of you who are in tobacco control, or those of you who if you just have eyes and you can recall commercials from television that used to be, or if you have cable television, you certainly see e-cigarettes being promoted. And some of the same commercials, the flavor of those commercials are the same as what they did with regular cigarettes. Pretty much this actor, I keep blocking on his name, but he's really rugged and he's well known. And that's exactly right. Thank you, dear. Thank you, Keisha. And I call him the electronic cigarette Marlboro Man. He's comparable to that, to the Marlboro Man. And then we have Jenny McCarthy. She's on the View, and she is just a huge, and I'm using the term pusher of e-cigarettes. But what the e-cigarette companies have done, they've gone out and found celebrities, people with huge names, with broad appeal, sex appeal, if you will, and all of that, those things that really happened when years ago when they were marketing, they being big tobacco, were marketing combustible cigarettes. So there is nothing new in how they're marketing, it's just a new product. So you need to keep that in mind, because when we are doing counter marketing campaigns, we can kind of apply some of our same old tried and true tactics as well. Okay, marketing and framing tactics to avoid, that we want to avoid as tobacco control advocates when it comes to talking about electronic cigarettes. I was in a conference in Boston in November, and I sat in on probably 4 electronic cigarettes workshops across the spectrum. And there was a common thread in the theme of speakers in each of the workshops. They wanted you to know that the e-cigarette companies, now owned by most major tobacco companies, I want you to know each tobacco company in the U.S. now owns an e-cigarette company. And you probably want to know, like, why is that? That's a good question. I want you to think about it. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about the electronic cigarette industry. Intent is to get public advocates like you and me to kind of buy into their terminology and how this product should be promoted. The one thing that the industry knows, that the public consciousness really picks up this visual image anytime we use the word cigarettes. When you close your eyes and say cigarettes, you're probably seeing this product and you probably see smoke and you see flames or something like that. They know that to be true, and that is a positive on our side. You don't ever want to use or lose the word cigarettes. So that's why I told you I'm going to make sure that I take the long way home when I'm describing the product. You don't want it to decrease it or reduce it to, oh, it's a vaping device or just an e-cig, because, you know, this kind of sounds kind of like, okay, attractive, we want it. You don't want to glamorize it. And there is a push by the industry to make us use those terminologies. And so we want to make sure that we want to avoid the term vaping. Now, if you must use it, you want to say something like, you know, a vaping, electronic cigarette, also known as, if you're talking to kids, you may also know it as vaping or a vaping device, but you want to come back to describing it as electronic cigarettes, also known as an e-cigarette or something like that, because you never ever want to lose the description of this product, because the one thing now, the tobacco industry that now owns these e-cigarette companies, they want to know, we want to drop that stigma, get rid of that stigma of a, quote, cigarette, and we want to always have that stigma and make it present, okay? Okay, and then the next piece of information I'm going to share with you is kind of like an omnibus of things, and I just call it where the rubber meets the road. I wanted you to know, and of course, information that's good for you so you can put it in your pocket, and when you're writing your grant or when you're talking with someone, there are just some things you want to know about this product. And of course, the first bullet point is this: all big tobacco companies in the U.S. own e-cigarette companies. I shared that with you. Some e-cigarette companies are attempting to get state health departments like ADH to, guess what, to sanction their products as a proven cessation device. And they're working hard, and some states are, at least in November when I was at this conference, there were some state health departments even considering doing so. But this again is how the e-cigarette companies are marketing their products, and they know if they ever get a state health department to, sanction this product by using it, they're well on their way. Those of you who are here perhaps may remember U.S. Surgeon General Richard Kimono. Back, it was in 2009, he issued, when he was Surgeon General under the last President Bush administration, but he issued a really wonderful, strong Surgeon General's report, and I want to say it was 2009, where he said the debate is over. There is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. I mean, he went on, he was rock solid. But guess what? He left office, and guess what he is doing today? He is signed on, he's the board of directors on one of the electronic cigarette companies. And probably a day or two after he joined the board of directors, and I'm blocking on the name of the actual company, but they had a huge media campaign about this U.S. Surgeon General being a part of their board of directors. Why do you think they spent money promoting this? Because that bought them some clout. And that same clout that they bought, and I'm using the term bought, but he said he went there because he wanted them to have his voice and his expertise, and if they were going in the wrong direction, he could just steer them back. Well, okay, if you say so, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt, but I don't think so. But here again, they are out to get credibility. So another way they're doing that is working with states to say, hey, health department, I want you to do this. This is a good thing. And we don't want that to happen. And then the other thing that the tobacco industry, it is still the same people, but the electronic cigarette industry is trying to do is to renormalize tobacco usage. We know that the combustible cigarette or smoking has actually been denormalized in the U.S. and other places in the world too. So they want to renormalize that, and when I say denormalize, some years ago it wouldn't have been anything for, if we came into a building, they would ask you smoking or non-smoking. You don't get asked that questions, and when somebody do, you kind of think like, what planet did they come from? Why would they ask me that? Nobody smokes on the inside. A few people still do in Arkansas, and we'll talk about that later. But that is denormalizing. Or if somebody is smoking, you're in the park, and you probably say, hey man, do you mind kind of moving that away from me? Before, because we are nice people here in the Bible Belt, and we don't like to insult one another, we would just grin and bear it like, oh God, they're killing me. But we wouldn't dare ask them to move their cigarette. But today, most of us don't have a problem. Those are examples of denormalizing a product. Well, we've done a good job of that. But the industry now wants to renormalize the product, and one of the ways they're doing that is through the use of electronic cigarette. You notice in the first two slides, I gave you the picture, the components, the 3 components, but as you put it together, what does it look like? It looks like a cigarette, and you use it the same way. I mean, the same, you mimic, you put it in, and they take it out, they blow. Now, they are quick to say, when I'm blowing, it's not secondhand smoke, it is a vapor, but pretty much everything you do with and how you use electronic cigarette is how a person smokes a cigarette. Also denormalizing something, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So when we started passing smoke-free laws and people are smoking less, so you see that product less, so it just doesn't seem like normal, right? So with e-cigarettes growing $1 billion, $10 billion, and it's using among our kids, so that means that we are seeing it, we are visually seeing it more frequently, which goes into say, okay, that's pretty normal. So they're trying to bring back smoking and make it fashionable. So that's what we mean about the intent is to renormalize tobacco while growing the e-cigarette market. Believe me, Each tobacco company owns an e-cigarette company, but they're not planning to stop. They are not planning to stop selling combustibles. They have the best of both worlds, but this product is helping them to renormalize tobacco. So I want you to know that. And then making smoking cool. We talked about the really glamorous people who's using the products, and they're telling you you can use it any place, take it on a plane, take it on a train, take it anywhere you can't smoke today. And we're gonna talk about that. But this product bears watching. It bears watching. As a matter of fact, it bears us trying to prevent its growth. And it is making it easier for smokers to smoke. I also want you to know that it's just not like 1 or 2 products on the market. They have something for everybody. Did you know there are more than 150 flavors of e-cigarettes? And when I say that, and there are 5 categories. E-cigarettes are broken down into 5 major categories when they're selling. There's some people who just I want my product, but I want it in menthol. I just want mine maybe in regular tobacco. There's people who like them fruity. So they have flavors in the fruit side, and then some is just sweet, and then some have they're reminiscent of alcoholic beverages in terms of their flavoring. These particular products, again, $500 million in sales in 2012, projected to be $1 million in 2013, and hopefully this is early 2014, so we will know if they actually met their projection of that $1 billion sale mark. There are 3 major brands of e-cigarettes in the U.S. Not saying that's the only 3. There are only 3, but there are 3 major brands, and they are Blue, Enjoy, and Mystic. And then those are the 3 major brands, but the top 5 brands make up 85% of the market share of e-cigarettes. And here's a little bit about each one of the companies that sell them, the top 3. Enjoy has the flavor. They don't go into all the fruitiness and that type of thing. Their product is basically tobacco or nicotine flavored product. And so that's for Enjoy. Flavored tobacco products are used in particular regions of the country. Doesn't mean that all over the country they're not used, but they're more prevalent in certain parts of the country. And we found from researchers that were reported back in November at this conference that I attended, fruit flavors are more popular in southern states and in metropolitan areas. We live in a southern state, and if you're working in a metro area, maybe Little Rock and that type of thing, you may want to know, well, what is the best-selling products in my target audience and that type of thing. So just remember that. E-cigarettes, they come, basically, you can buy them in starter kits or disposable. When I first saw them in 2009, they were basically in a kit, starter kit. But they came up, I'm telling you, they are evolving every day. While we're sleeping, the companies are coming up with new ways to market their products. So you can have disposable products as well. But the edge is really on the ones with the kits. Most people are trying to buy the kits and then do the refill, buy the refill nicotine, the liquid nicotine to put inside of the product. Enjoy has the edge on disposable products, and refill tobacco is the #1. We said that most people do not like disposable, but Enjoy say, hey, our popularity, we're going to market disposable ones. That's what we're going to do. But we do know that the refill is the most popular device. Electronic cigarettes undermine smoke-free laws. We know, I heard everybody in here, along with myself, share why we're here today. We want to write a grant, and we hope to secure funding to allow us to do some very unique things or things that are very common around the state in terms of smoke-free laws or gaining them and policies. But here again, we are talking about a product that is trying to undermine our work every step along the way. When e-cigarette companies advertise, and if you haven't watched cable, I challenge you, invite you to do, because they're all over cable television, their commercials. They are all over the commercials, airways, it's just amazing. And they are, again, I want to keep emphasizing, they are trying to renormalize smoking. And if they renormalize smoking, what they're doing is making an adverse impact on any tobacco-free or smoke-free laws that we currently have. I.e., let's say if you are going out to dinner at a restaurant and it's a smoke-free restaurant, but the e-cigarette companies will have you decide, hey, listen, this is a new kind of product, you can use it any place, and that is their intent. They want to go under the radar and they want to get around any smoke-free laws that we have in place. So you can't smoke a combustible cigarette in most restaurants, and unfortunately in Arkansas we do have some loopholes that we're going to remove in 2015, I just believe that. But anyway, in the meantime, they're saying we don't care about those loopholes in Arkansas, or we don't care about 100% smoke-free laws anyplace else, because you can take this little magical device and you can use it anywhere you go. Doesn't matter. Now, the airline industry, my friends, were really, really wise. They weren't sleeping while the rest of us were sleeping. The airline industry saw this coming and they cut it off at the knees, because people were getting on planes, pulling out their e-cigarettes and taking them a little puff. Well, most of the people, if you can imagine, on the planes were saying, wait, hey, wait, what's going on here? So the industry decided we now need to nip this in the bud. So on airlines, you cannot, their policies, you cannot use e-cigarettes. But in airports, I was in Dallas recently, going through the Dallas DFW. Guess what? Wasn't in a smoking lounge. They were just sitting out there waiting for their plane, and people were just smoking their electronic cigarette. Renormalizing smoking where there's no smoking. Restaurants, and they're telling you, bars, take back your freedom, take back your freedom. This is a good product. Here, they're undermining all of the work that we've done. You want to know, this is Catherine's word, this is a bad product. This is not good for us. I firmly believe this is not a good product for us. All of the research has not been done, but the research that has been done is showing that there are some comparable things to combustible cigarettes. But what this particular device is able to do in terms of undermining the work that we do every single day is tremendous, with or without the research. Okay? What can we do? Policies to regulate e-cigarettes. And I wanted to pose that question to you, the things that we could do. You can look at your personal level, and I call that really, really low-hanging fruit, because if you work in an agency, a nonprofit organization, and you have an employment policy in place, your book on what happens and how it happens at your place of business, you can go back to your board of directors, or if you're the decision makers, you can say we need to amend our policies by adding e-cigarettes as a prohibited element. We don't smoke here, and that includes e-cigarettes and so forth and so on. That's what you can do from a personal level, and that can be done immediately. I know one of the things that CTFA, Coalition for Tobacco-Free Arkansas, the organization in which I work, that is going to be on my board of directors next on the agenda for our very next monthly meeting, so we can update our policy. And we can do that, so you can think about that. As a business level, we can, in your work plan, in the work that you do every day, or in your future work plans, you can do that. I know many of us are talking to the businesses that are exempt from the SmokeFree Law, which is, those of you who are new, was Act 8, passed back in 2006, our smoke-free workplace law in the state of Arkansas. And many of us are working with those businesses trying to say to them, please, please adhere to the law. You know, don't be exempt. You need to protect your workers. But while we're doing that, we can actually work with them, educate them why e-cigarettes should be a part of their policy. So you can do that at the community level. We can talk about that with your mayor. CTFA is going to be holding a mayor's forum on April 25th at the Wyndham, and you guys are going to hear more about that, and I hope each of you will ask your mayor to come and come with your mayor. It's a free event, but we want them in the room because mayors and elected and appointed officials need to know that this is something they can do, they can act on without an act of Congress or an act of the governor. They have the ability to say, hey, we're going to regulate e-cigarettes in our communities. This is where they can be sold. We can, you know, you can't use them. They can pass an ordinance. You can't use them. Any place you can't smoke a cigarette, you can't smoke an e-cigarette there. You have your local officials who can make that decision. So you want to know, you have some power. Then at the state level, you can be prepared because the state of Arkansas is trying to remove the exemptions I told you in our fancy smoke-free workplace law, which is Act 8 of 2006. And we are working to include e-cigarette language in there, meaning that any place you smoke, you cannot use an e-cigarette. That is currently not in Arkansas. The language is inside of the current law, but we want it to be. So we're going to work on the state level, trying to get that inside of a law, strengthening and making better an existing law, right? And then on the national level, you want to follow campaigns like, guess what, Chicago, Illinois, over the Christmas holidays in early January, they did two momentous things. They did, number one, the first major city to ever regulate menthol products, the sale of menthol products. Menthol products are really promoted to the African American community, and it's a whole story that goes along with that. But Chicago decided no more. Mayor Ron Emanuel and his council people decided they would act on that. So that happened just before Christmas. And then in early January, they came back and the city council actually prohibits the sale of electronic cigarettes. It can be done, it's been done. New York City has done the same. And those of you who are going to be in a webinar later on this month, I think sponsored by the Arkansas Cancer Coalition, there will be someone there talking about the Chicago initiative and also New York. So you want to tune into that. It's that building your repertoire information, okay? So this product is dangerous. This product needs to be regulated. This product needs additional research. This product is undermining our social norm changes, and this product is trying to re-normalize smoking consciously and subconsciously, I say. And that's what I have for you in Tobacco 101, but this is one other piece that's not on the slide, and I thought about it over the weekend. I want you to know, because I believe really information is power and you need to know some things. I want you to know that R.J. Reynolds, one of those fancy tobacco companies that also owns an e-cigarette company, they have made it a point to, you know, I told you about what we can do at the state level and what states are doing, trying to curtail the growth of e-cigarettes. Well, the tobacco companies are out to say, hey, while you're trying to do that, we're trying to block you. We're going to prevent you from doing that. And there is a campaign, where Ms. Tony's gone, there is actually a campaign by the tobacco companies that own e-cigarette companies to really lock states down. And when I say that, I want you to know they have a team of lobbyists. This is just one company. We know what R.J. Reynolds is doing. And they have come up with a draft copy of a bill that they can drop on any state. If they can find sponsors at any state, and they are looking for sponsors, so their lobbyists is going across the country, the U.S., state houses, trying to find people that would be friendly to them. And once they find their friends, they're saying, hey, take this model piece of legislation, make it fit for Arkansas, make it fit for Florida, make it fit for Minneapolis. But what we want to see happen, we want you to pass a law so in your state, tobacco is actually defined, and once they define it, they're going to define it where e-cigarette can never ever be classified as a tobacco product or part of a tobacco product. So if we go back and want to add e-cigarettes into Act 8, back when we strengthen it, of course it'll be a new Act number, but we will have the language in. If a bill like that passes in the state of Arkansas, we could not do that. So the tobacco industry they have we're doing the inch by inch, and they're doing that globally, if you will. So I want you to know that, but that is R.J. Reynolds, and they are working, and they have their piece of model legislation already ready, and they have lobbyists in place, and they have more money than almost God, to pay for them. And we need to be ready, because we need to be ready if we hear that is going to happen, or an inkling of that is happening at our state house in the state of Arkansas. We need to be ready and to go and make contact with legislators to say, or have your coalition members to make that contact if you cannot. Like, we don't want this. This is not good for Arkansas. And you can state some of the reasons that you learned that was shared here today in our Electronic Cigarettes 101 presentation. So anyway, I wanted to leave you empowered with that piece of information as well. I would say thank you and gracias.